Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. Welcome back. Today's project, we're going to be working on a Skidoo 300 Freestyle, one of my favorites. So, task at hand is to get this sled running again. It was brought to me here this winter, and it looks like last spring it wasn't probably summarized. In fact, I know it wasn't summarized at all. It's put on a pallet, set up in a shop, and fast forward 6-8 months, and it's here again. So what I'd like to do is go through kind of the basics of getting a carbureted machine like this back up and running. And this one happens to be a freestyle, but this is in the hopes of maybe it'll help you get back on the snow with whatever machine that you're working on, specifically a carbureted machine. This freestyle machine that Skidoo made happens to be very basic. It's a single cylinder, 2-stroke, 300cc, single carburetor, single exhaust, but the principle remains the same across all carbureted sleds, more or less. But I figured this one would be a very simple tutorial for you guys to apply in your own garages. Alright guys, so as you can see, the beauty of the freestyles that Skidoo put out, very easy to remove panels, remove the hood. It's literally, I think, about 4 different rubber straps, 1 electrical connection, and maybe a pin. So disassemble is very easy. And so I think next I'll just give you a basic look of the engine cavity, overall sled, so you guys can just get a feel for it, see what it looks like. Hey guys, all right, we're gonna tackle removing the carburetor so we can get at this at the fuel system. So first step, I'm gonna pop the spare toolbox off, pop the secondary clutch off to help us remove this airbox assembly. It's kind of a two-part, part 1 and 2. That's the next step. Okay guys, got the 2 airbox assemblies removed. Here's just a shot of what it looks like here. With those removed, next step, we'll be removing the carburetor. Couple pro tips. If you guys have a runaway idle condition with your freestyle, check this guy right here, your cylinder to carburetor boot. Last year for this customer, there was a spider crack right along one of the ribs of these, and it was sucking in air, so it was running lean, increasing the idle RPM. Anyway, it was a very simple fix, but it took me quite a while to find that little guy. The other pro tip, don't forget about your grease zerk down here. You're definitely going to want to hit that. There'll be more in the video, but I just wanted to show you those since they were handy. Next step, remove this guy. Alright guys, so we got the carburetor removed totally from the sled. I tipped the carburetor upside down. All the fuel from the bowl was removed via the vent lines, which are these guys right here, kind of handy. Our next step, so your idle RPM set screw, as well as your pilot screw, we're going to twist those in as far as they go, while at the same time measuring how many revolutions it took to set those in, because we're going to need that upon reassembly to make sure that we get this back to factory settings. So that'll be the next step. Alright guys, so the screw detail, we'll start with our pilot air screw first, which is this guy right here. So he's roughly at, I'll call that 0 degrees, and I do it by 180 degree turns, so I do, there's half, there's 1, there's 1.5, there's 2, there's 2.5, Okay, I'm going to say that guy's 2.5. Now, for your idle RPM screw, which is this guy, same thing. Okay, I'm going to grab my Phillips screwdriver. So we've got half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3. I'll say 3 1/4 on that one. So 3 1/4 on the idle screw, 2.5 on the pilot air screw. Now I'm going to take both those guys, since we've got it notated, and I'm just going to back them out completely and disassemble the carburetor. Alright, so now that step's done. Just a close-up detail of these guys. So this is your pilot air screw with a spring attached to it. This is your idle control screw here, also with the spring attached. And then on that previous step, I removed the bowl from the carburetor, so you can see in there, there's your floats, there's your drain plug, etc. Here in the back corner, these are the 4 screws that secured the bolt to the body of the carb. And underneath, this is where stuff starts to get a little juicy. You can see the main jet right there. We're also going to see our pilot jet up in, there we go, up in this little cavity here. Fuel inlet, nozzle, etc. So my next step is going to be to remove this. The goal is going to be remove all this stuff from the channel so that we can get brake clean in there and compressed air. And because there's a lot of tiny passages where fuel flows through that's easily obstructable by fuel gunk, dirt, etc. So with the power brake cleaner and the power compressed air, we want to remove those so this thing operates as efficiently as possible. And you'll really notice it on a smooth idle. So time taken here pays dividends in the future, especially in the form of idling. So we've got the carburetor totally disassembled. There's a little bit better shot to the bottom of the main body of the carburetor. Of course, there's our bowl again. There's our idle screw. There's our pilot screw. Here's our main jet. Here's our pilot jet. This is just what the main jet sits in, just like so. Pilot jet. Here's my jet wrench for the main jet. Just a little hexagonal little finger wrench. Highly recommend, from Mikuni. Over here we've got our part of the bowl assembly. This is what lets fuel into the bowl. The float lever, and then the fuel inlet retainer clip right here, which slides over top of that. And then, of course, these are just kind of an overview of the tools I use to disassemble this assembly. This I'll use for cleaning. It's just a dental pick. You can get a pack of them on Amazon, really cheap, really inexpensive. Helps for getting in all the tight corners and whatnot, getting grime off of them. So next step, we'll take brake clean all these, and then with the power of our compressor, we will blow them off as well. And I found that brake clean and compressor combination just works wonders. It's really quick, really powerful, and gets it back into the machine quicker. So that'll be up next. Alright guys, so we got the carburetor clean. It does a really nice job, that brake cleaner and compressed air. Along with the internal parts, I do the external parts. That way when you get done, it's about as shiny as it can be. Keep in mind this thing's almost 20 years old. So there's going to be some corrosion on there, etc. Next step, so we'll take all the components that we just cleaned, we'll throw back into this guy, and we'll be one step closer to get this thing running. Alright, so carburetor is back assembled. Next step, put it back in the machine and probably tackle the spark plug next. Alright guys, so we just installed the new spark plug in the sled. For reference, it's an NGK BR9ES, and of course single cylinder, one plug. I bought two. I always love to have an extra spare or two. There's a spot on the airbox for them, which is right here. So if you're out in the field, have another one. So I bought two at Napa. One brand new I put in the cylinder. It had one existing, so I'll add another new one, so I'll have two spare. But I wanted to show you guys the one that came out, and it had a very, very nice kind of cardboard brown / black color to it on the insulator inside. Last year it must have been running really well. I see no signs of concern there, so that's great. Spark plug gap was set on the one that went in the sled, and that is 0.018 inches spark plug gap. Alright guys, so spark plug's back in, cap on. That part is complete, so now we will insert our freshly cleaned carburetor back into the unit. Couple points, noteworthy points. We're going to be attaching the carburetor or the choke cable back onto the body. We're going to be reinserting the carburetor throttle slide assembly back into the top of this thing. Then we're also going to connect the fuel line back on. Pro tip, if you guys have any RTV silicone applicator tips that come with a package like that, say from Napa, they work as an excellent plug for a fuel line, so you don't have fuel dribbling out the whole time you're tackling this process. So that'll be the next thing you see here, is this guy going back into the sled. Alright guys, carburetor is back in. You can see, well, kind of on the back side, we've got our choke assembly tightened back down. We've got our throttle slide assembly secured back down in. I was going to connect the fuel line back on here, but then remembered that I have no idea how old this fuel is inside here, so I'm going to drain this tank and put fresh gasoline in there. My guess is that they just put it away last spring, and so that gas is probably 10 months old, and just shelf life of gas anymore seems to be next to nothing. So we'll get rid of that old stuff, put new in, and I won't connect this to the carburetor until we have fresh gas in here, just to ensure that whatever goes into the carburetor bowl is indeed fresh gas. So hopefully this thing just pops right off the bat, starts right up, and one less thing to worry about. That'll be next. Okay guys, so I'll show you the next part here. We've got our handy dandy siphon assembly. It's just basically probably some 3/4 inch fuel line and a brass siphon end, ball bearing in the, not a ball bearing, but a ball in the end of it to create the siphon effect. Brass end goes into the tank. Use our fuel gauge. This guy over here in a clean environment. Brass end into the tube. Excess into your fuel tank that's on the ground. And then kind of feel for the bottom of the tank when your brass fitting hits the bottom. That's usually where I like to place mine. And then once there, just keep shaking it. And you'll see that fuel travel down the line. And once you got a steady stream going, it's transferring fuel right now. One of the better tools I've got in my garage. I'm guessing this will probably take 3 to 5 minutes. Alright guys, old fuel is out, new fuel going in. Probably throw in about 5 gallons. Also guys, can't stress enough, new fuel in a 2-stroke engine is paramount to anything else as far as diagnosing why something may not be running right. In my previous video, old fuel is just garbage, even if it's from 6 months ago. Just consider it garbage. Do yourself a favor, go out and get new stuff and save a lot of heartache. Okay, full of fuel, 3/4 full anyway. And then again, while you're filling it, here's the plug to the carburetor, or to the carburetor fuel supply line. That's just a cap off of a RTD silicone that I've got shoved in there temporarily. So next step, take this out real quick, shove the line on the carburetor, secure the clamp, and then we'll start filling that bowl with fresh gasoline. Okay guys, so we got the fuel line hooked back up, clamp secured to the carburetor. Our next step, we're going to hook the airbox assembly back up to the carburetor. So this is the one that goes right behind the carb. There's a secondary piece, which is this guy. He's going to connect to this one, and these guys just kind of ride, one kind of behind the carburetor, one kind of above the cylinder. So we'll do that next. Also guys, side note, very important to have these connections properly seated. Just ensures that it's drawing air from this device, which relates to jetting as far as the carb. Make sure it's getting that proper back pressure, if you will, to suck the appropriate amount of fuel through the carb, but then also make sure it just gets routed through the airbox, because that'll draw cleaner air, and also just eliminate a little bit of noise for the rider up there too. So just double check your joints. Okay guys, so airbox part 1 connected via tube, airbox part 2 right up here. That is all connected. Ensure this joint is very tight, very snug, as well as the carburetor to the engine intake boot, also very snug. Vent lines for the carburetor. Skidoo's got a nice system here. They just hook right into the airbox up top here, which is great. Those are reconnected again. So fuel line, vent lines, carb to intake boot, secure, airbox to carburetor, secure, airbox to airbox, secure. So now I'm going to take the grease gun and hit this zerk here before I put the secondary clutch back on and the toolkit. Okay guys, so as always, I like to clean up the zerks before I hit them with fresh grease, just to get the initial gunk off of them. Take our handy dandy electronic grease gun, tip on here, just some all-purpose grease, cap, put it on here, hit the trigger. That'll do it. I'll just kind of clean up the little bit that's on the zerk, just so there's no excess. And we'll take our clutch, secondary clutch that is. I'll take that guy, put him back on the shaft, like that, just so I don't forget. Secondary clutch bolt. Throw that back in. So next guys, I'll torque this bolt down. We'll take our drive belt, reinstall that on the clutches. Toolkit, reinstall, and this part of the operation will be about complete. Alright guys, so belt is back on, secondary is back on, spare toolkit's back on. One thing to note, this drive belt must have been installed backwards, because it's installed exactly the opposite of basically how they want you to. When you're on this side of the sled looking at the drive belt, you should be able to read the Bombardier and the part number. But since this one has been installed and broke in this direction, I'm just going to continue to put it in that direction because when these dry belts break in, take a set, those fibers are stretched a certain way. They're used to running in a counterclockwise motion that way. So you run the risk, if you flip it now, might cause undue stress and blow a belt. So although this is the incorrect way to do it, since it's broken in this way, I'm going to leave it. But just wanted to give you guys that little tidbit of a tip, and also just a closer up look of what we got going here. So I think we're about ready to see if this thing's going to pop off. Alright guys, so we got the sled greased. Everything's back assembled, minus the hood, side panels. I've got the rear elevated on a jack stand. More or less primed the carburetor. I'm going to put it on full choke here. Ignition on, kill switch on. I think we're ready to try and start it. See what happens. Well guys, that went really good. Good enough. I think I'm going to put the panels on, the hood on, and probably go take it for a real life spin out there and see how she does. Okay guys, panels on, ready to go give her a field test. Well guys, took her out for a spin, like a champ. These things are really fun. There's just enough snow to basically just goof around. But you're a fan and stuff. It's nice and cold. It's sure staying cool, but just an excellent little sled. Perfect for anyone that wants to have a good time. You're a kid, ice fisherman, etc. Well, thanks again guys for tuning in. The sled ran really well, so we were able to bring that back to the owner's place. I took a picture, which I'll insert here. Ran it, let it sit, ran it again, let it sit, loaded up on the trailer. I try and just throw it through a little test drive, just to try and simulate real world conditions, just so we don't get that that call back that no one wants, just saying, hey, the sled didn't run, or this didn't work, etc., etc. So everything turned out great. So I guess it'll be on to the next project. So thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on anything you'd like to add, anything that you saw me do incorrectly, etc. So yeah, as always, thanks again, and more to come.